audibly or visually. And Madam Clerk, changes to the agenda. Okay, I'll start again then, just for posterity. The members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton, temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals and media may also audibly or visually be recording this meeting. And so let's call this Hamilton Renewable Power Inc. shareholder meeting to order and begin with you, Madam Clerk. Any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Deputy Mayor, there are none.
May I have a motion then, please, to approve the agenda as presented, and that's moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favour? That's carried. Any declarations of interest on this particular agenda today? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes, those minutes from October 20th, 2017, so it would have to be a councillor in that era, and that's moved by Mayor Fred Eisenberger, seconded by Councillor Pearson, and that's for the October 20th, 2017 minutes. All in favour? Any opposed? Seeing none. On to presentations. We have Tom Cheeseman, who would like to present. I had a member, Chessman. Do we want to, I had somebody indicated they wanted to waive the presentation. Okay, we have two of the four new councillors here, so let's do that then. Come on up. You are not Chessman or Cheeseman?
Neither. Rome D'Angelo. So through the chair, I'm going to have to apologize. We don't have the PowerPoint presentation, so if we can follow through the hard copy of the presentation. So I'm just starting on the cover page. So good afternoon, members of committee. My name is Rome D'Angelo. I'm the appointed president for Hamilton Renewable Power Inc. Today we'll be presenting the City of Hamilton's own corporation, which is the Hamilton Renewable Power Incorporation. So the second page, second slide, we have a bit of an agenda. I'll be presenting the background. Frank Gazzola will be providing the 2018 operational update, and David Oakes will walk us through the 2018 corporate finances. If you turn to page, slide 3, sorry. This is a look at the corporate governance for this corporation. City of Hamilton is the sole shareholder, with committee and council as the representatives of the shareholders. The board of directors are made up of city council, which was appointed in today's GIC on item 10.12. And the corporate office is as follows. Myself as president, and I'm going to ask staff if they can stand up and be recognized as I call your name. So Tom Chessman is the senior vice president. Frank Gazzola, he's the vice president. Rick Mill, treasurer, he's not here today, but David Oakes is our senior financial analyst. And Janet Pilon is our secretary, and she's not here as well. So if you go on to slide 4, typically we have 2 board meetings and one AGM meeting. The purpose of our board meeting is to provide annual audited financial statements. We provide regular updates as well as corporate strategies and corporate energy initiatives to the board, and as well as providing the fiscal budgets, that current year budget, as well as the financial statements for that particular year. On slide 5, How this corporation benefits the city through Hamilton Renewable Power. City of Hamilton is a municipal leader in providing renewable energy and green power. This year alone, we estimated about $3.7 million as shareholder value. And Hamilton Renewable Energy generates 4.8 megawatts of energy annually, which is equivalent to about powering 3,400 homes, which is equivalent to reduction in emissions, approximately 100,000 tons of CO2 gases that's reduced. It's equivalent to removing 22,000 vehicles from our streets. Some background information. If you go to slide 6 and 7, slide 6, so we have 2 locations that we operate from. The Woodward plant, and we've been operating at the Woodward plant since 2005. We have a 20-year power purchase. We're running a 1.6 megawatt generator. Methane from the digesters is purchased from Hamilton Water and used as a fuel source for the generators. And then heat from the engine is harvested, and it's sold back to Hamilton Water in order to operate and part of their waste management or wastewater process. And city staff oversee that operation. There's a charge back from our city budgets over to Hamilton Renewable Power, and we outsource some of the operations through Tormont and Hamilton Community Energy for operations and maintenance of that plant. On slide 7, our second location is Glam Brook. We have 2 engines up there, 2 1.6 megawatt engines, similar to Woodward. We take the methane from the ground, from the waste, and we produce electricity. We have a 20-year contract there, similar to Woodward. We have a contract with Tormont and Hamilton Community Energy to manage those assets for the city. And the city staff have oversight. And again, there's a charge back to Hamilton Renewable Energy on our charges from the city to them. And in that particular site, we produce about electricity that powers close to 2,100 homes. If you go to page, the next slide is Operational Update 2018, and I'm going to call Frank Gazzola, and he'll run us through. Frank, you can do it from up there. So.
Okay. Thank you. And
please to identify each page as you go
Yes.
through, which would have represented slides for our purposes. Thank you.
through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'll definitely do so. So we're moving forward then from the title page of slide number 8 onto slide number 9, which is a graph showing the monthly kilowatt-hour production for both Woodward and Glam Brook combined. Just want to point out that this is data and information up to September of this year, so obviously we're beyond that point. So as we wrap up to year end, we will update that information. But essentially what we're looking at in terms of the output from the 2 sites, we're down roughly 15.6% from the same point in time of 2017. And the primary reason for that is during the latter part of 2017, the latter quarter, and the first quarter of 2018, Council may recall that the methane storage sphere at Woodward was offline due to the recoding and resurfacing project. And so the feedstock gas was unavailable, so the production from just the Woodward site was not available. That's why the drastic reduction in output. But individually, and I'll touch on that, but Glam Brook was still functioning and actually produced 8.2% more output relative to the same point in time last year. So if we can move on then to slide number 10. As I just mentioned, the Glam Brook engine operating hours and the output was higher. So the information that we track is not only the energy produced in terms of kilowatt hours, but we also track the engine hours. The maintenance service contract is pegged towards those operating hours, and it's in our best interest to keep the operating time as high as possible. So we typically are tracking in the high 90s, 95% of availability, so it has a pretty good track record maintaining operation and producing output. So as I mentioned earlier, we're up about 8% over the same period of last year, and we saw a corresponding increase of about 1% in operating engine hours. So the increased output versus just the 1% operating hour increase, I think is demonstrate that we've managed to increase the yield and the output from the machines and get greater production through it. And then if I may ask you to move on to slide number 11. And this isolates just the Woodward engine operating hours. And as was previously stated, we essentially lost 6 months worth of production due to the coating of the sphere. However, while the production output it was dropped off significantly by about 40%. More recently, now that we're status quo operating back to normal, the output through there I think is higher than was anticipated through budget. Okay. And now we're moving on to the next slide, which is the financial update for 2018, and I'll hand it over to David Oak.
Previous slides. Sure, Councillor Pearson.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And just because it's on the slide, so do we know the reason that the Glam Brook's increase in production, well, why it increased in Glam Brook over, well, I know why it didn't at Woodward, but why did it increase at Glam Brook?
Yep, through the chair to the councillor. Essentially what the primary reason is there is uptime, and we have a 1% increase in uptime, and we're able to dial into the speed of the machine. It's all relative to how much gas is available in the landfill as well. So it's a bit of a balancing act between drawing the appropriate amount to keep the engines properly fueled and being careful not to overdraw the gas, because that creates problems. If you tap into the wells too quickly, then the engines fail. So the operator up there has done a very good job of maintaining that balance, and from time to time we'll tweak the engines to get more production output from it.
Okay. And I guess what I was leading to is the possibility, because of some of our compost material going up there, would that have increased the amount of production?
Again, through the chair to councillor. The more recent diversion probably wouldn't impact the gas production, because it does require some time for those materials to break down. So I would suggest it's more the existing material that's in landfill that's contributing to it.
But then we can only look forward to more increase going forward. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you very much. And, okay, on to the financials.
Okay, so if you refer to slide number 13, which is the first financial slide, this slide is a high-level summary of 2018 year-to-date revenues and expenditures for the period ending September 30th. At this point in the year, a budgeted net loss of $58,000 was anticipated due to the shutdown of the Woodward cogeneration facility during the January to April months. However, due to improved hourly production rates at the Glam Brook facility, a net profit of $55,000 has been realized, translating into a $113,000 favorable variance. Hamilton Renewable Power has only 3 revenue sources, with the bulk of the income coming from electricity supplied to Hydro One and the independent electricity system operator. Thermal energy sales to the city and bank interest make up the remaining revenues. Electricity generation accounts for about 88% of revenues earned, with thermal energy making up approximately 11% of the total. On the expense side of the ledger, repair and maintenance costs associated with operating and maintaining the generating equipment is responsible for 55% of the $1.5 million expense total. Maintenance could include periodic engine overhauls, unplanned repairs, or scheduled or routine servicing to prevent breakdowns. Other large expenses include depreciation, which makes up 27% of the total, and professional fees coming in at about 11%. Professional fees will mainly consist of legal, finance, and administrative support from city staff, as Hamilton Renewable Power has no employees. The acronym PILS that you see on the slide stands for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. Payments in lieu of corporate income tax is paid to the Ontario Ministry of Finance at 26.5% rate. Moving on to slide number 14. Shown here is a revenue and expense forecasted to the end of the 2018 fiscal year using September year-to-date financial results, as well as spending and earning assumptions for the October to the December period. net profit was projected to be approximately $72,000 by year-end as shown in this slide. However, more recent forecast calculations using October year-to-date financial numbers have this net profit totaling $100,000 by December 31, with 80% of this amount being returned to the city in the form of a shareholder dividend in the following year. This year-end forecast is a good news story given a budgeted net loss of $64,000 was expected for the year. On to slide number 15. Next slides are all going to provide you a historical perspective going back to the year 2006. So slide 15, this slide shows the actual net income earned by Hamilton Renewable Power over the last 12 years. The Woodward and the Glam Brook facilities commenced operations in 2006 and 2008 respectively, which accounts for a net loss reported in those years as fixed and variable costs exceeded the revenues earned. Both facilities started operations in the month of June, thereby limiting the amount of revenue that could be earned in the first year. From the years 2009 to 2017, operating expenses have remained relatively steady, ranging from $2.1 to $2.3 million. The decline in net income during this period is solely due to lower revenues, which dropped from $4.4 million in 2009 to $3.2 million in 2017, a $1.2 million or 27% decrease. Going on to slide number 16 now. Since commercial operations began, Hamilton Renewable Power has provided the city with a cumulative net benefit of $17.5 million when adding in this year's 2018 budgeted amount. This net benefit consists of payments issued by Hamilton Renewable Power to the city for goods and services or for our financial obligations. It will include payments for methane gas purchases, legal finance and administrative services, interest paid on outstanding city loans, and dividend payments. These payments are recorded as operating revenue in the city's books with the exception of the dividends, which are posted to reserves. This calculation also includes an opportunity cost, which is built into the benefit numbers under the assumption that the city could have earned a 3% rate of return on those funds loaned to the Hamilton Renewable Power. On to slide number 17 now. Hamilton Renewable Power initially borrowed $6.4 million from the city in the form of 2 capital loans to be paid back semi-annually over 10 years at an annual interest rate of 6.75%. These loans were used to finance the construction of the Woodward cogeneration and Glam Brook generating facilities. By the end of this year, this outstanding debt will be down to $278,000 and should be completely off the books in March 2019. Annual cash flows will increase by $575,000 with the elimination of this debt. On to slide number 18. By the end of 2018, close to $3.7 million will have been paid to the city in dividends. The city is the sole shareholder, having purchased 600,000 shares at $10 per share for a total value of $6 million. The Hamilton Renewable dividend policy identifies 2 types of dividend payouts. Regular dividends represent a targeted payment each year consisting of 80% of annual net earnings from the previous year audited financial statements. Special dividends are periodic payments that are made from excess retained earnings not required to maintain positive cash flow. You will notice that in the year 2010, a special dividend payment of $500,000 was issued to the city. In 2018, the dividend payment of $103,000 was allocated to 3 cities' reserves. 50% of the dividend went to the unallocated capital reserve, which is used to fund capital programs supported by the tax levy. 25% of the dividend was applied to the closed landfill reserve, which is used to fund existing and future costs to maintain the closed landfills. The remaining 25% was allocated to the wastewater capital reserve, which is used to fund sanitary sewer capital works. Slide 18 is the last financial slide. In closing, Hamilton Renewable Power is in a good financial position. It currently has assets of $7.3 million, with $6.3 million of this amount consisting of the undepreciated capital cost of the generating equipment, buildings, pipelines, and connections to the grid. These fixed assets had an original cost of value of $12.9 million, so have been about approximately 50% depreciated. As you can see, Hamilton Renewable Power has been profitable and provides a significant benefit to the city. There is no reason not to expect that this profitability trend not to continue into the foreseeable future. That's it.
Through the chair, that concludes our presentation, and we're open to any questions. The four of us are here if there are any questions directed to us.
Seeing none, I'd say keep up the great work, and Councilor Marula would like to move reception of the presentation, seconded by, oh, I didn't see that. Councilor Ferguson, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Typically, we see a summary of the net benefit to the city, which is the net profit, the sale of the glycol, and the chargeback of staff that we can charge back to it, and see a total net benefit. What I see now is the net profit and the glycol sale. I don't see the chargeback from the employees. And then a grand total, what's the net benefit to the city?
Through the chair, I'm going to defer that question to our senior analyst.
In the board meetings, we did have a slide that shows the net benefit, and we would break it out, showing the methane gas purchases, the fees paid to the city for professional service, which amounts to about $240,000.
For professional services?
For professional services, and it probably includes the cost recovery of 15 city staff in various departments: public works, city clerks, finance, corporate services. I don't have that slide in this presentation, but we tend to present that slide at the annual board meetings.
It's really helpful to see what the total gain is to the city. And the glycol is a big number. It's about, or the methane, it's about $500,000.
The methane is around $800,000. But that's a net gain to the city, because in the past the city would have flared off that methane gas,
So you got the methane of $600,000, and then you got the net profit, which it looks like it's going to be in the order, I think, of about $100,000. You're down a lot because the Woodward Avenue was down for so long last year.
Right. So
then you got the $250,000. So the net gain to the taxpayers is around $1.2 million this year, and it's been as high as $2 million, correct?
Correct. But over the years, the payments that Hamilton Renewable has paid the city for dividends and loan interest payouts have been declining. As we pay off the loan, we're paying out less interest to the city, and that's the major reason why you see that the net benefit's been declining over the years.
Okay, but now you're going to see $500,000 more come in because you're now debt-free.
Right, that's cash flow now. That's different than the net benefit. So the cash flow represents net income, and then we add back to non-cash expenses, which is depreciation, and then we deduct the principal debt payments. Okay, so
my only point of drawing this out, and I've done it when I used to be on the board, what's the net benefit to the city? And the net benefit is the dividends, as you say, the chargeback of the staff, the methane, and the net profit. And I always like to see that slide. So in future presentations, AGM, can you bring that slide along? You're right, you used to throw it to the board.
Right.
But bring it to us so we can see it, because that's, I mean, I use this as a poster child of why we need to encourage our staff to think out of the box and take some risks. Somebody took some risks to put that first plant down at Woodward Avenue. It could have blown up in our face, but it didn't. It generated over $1 million, then we doubled it with Glam Brook. And it's nice to see that.
Okay, and I think they're taking note, and President D'Angelo on that request.
Through the chair, we could follow up with a memo back to committee or the shareholders here prior to the end of next week, and we can break down slide number 16 in more detail and provide that information in a memo format.
And only a lot of detail, what's the net benefit to the city? Thank you, Mr. President.
Mayor Fred.
Thank you. So just on that, I know the financials are good. They always have been, and even though we had a little dip. And so for those that might not know, the methane dip that we had was the Globe, which is our methane collection system. Maybe you're aware of that? Okay. So the methane collection system was offline because it was being refurbished and renewed and repainted, and we got the world back on there. And that then obviously diminished our source of methane, and therefore we got a lower return that year, right?
Yes, through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. And so I wouldn't want to forget about the environmental benefit. I know Councillor Ferguson is always hard on the financial benefits, but the environmental benefit in terms of CO2 emissions are not small. 100,000 tons of CO2 emissions actually reduced as a result of our collecting methane and using it as an energy source. So when you're reporting back, report back on financial benefits and environmental benefits. I think both of them are equally significant.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think we're taking that under advisement, and we'll do so in the future. Good call and comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I have that motion then? It's Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? And that is to receive the presentation and the report. So thank you. None opposed to that. And finally, any discussions respecting 6.1? If not, a mover and a seconder is needed, and that's moved by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Clark. All in favor? Any opposed? May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Pauls. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Clerk Stephanie.